So it's very it's quite something. They did the sanction within just a couple minutes of the time that we'd left office, right after the swearing in of President Biden. You'll get a kick out of this. My son is engaged to a young lady named Rachel. She's a delightful woman, and she called me really quickly and said, "Mr. Pompeo, am I marrying into the sanctions regime?"
So I'd like to welcome this week a very special guest. He's a former Secretary of State and, of course, the former director of the CIA, a congressman, a lawyer, and possibly other stuff that we're finding out. Secretary Mike Pompeo. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm really good. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on today.
So tell me a little bit about your story. I know you grew up in California, but then you ended up in Kansas and got into politics. Tell me a little bit about that.
A little bit of a long trip, but the departure from California was to go to West Point. So I graduated from there 4 years later, and then was in the Army for 5 years. Then went to law school, practiced law for a bit, and ended up back in Kansas as an entrepreneur, starting a company with three of my best friends in the whole world, fellow classmates of mine from West Point. We bought a machine shop on the north end of Wichita, Kansas, and ran that business for a whole handful of years. So I consider myself a manufacturing guy more than anything else, frankly.
An entrepreneur in politics, isn't that kind of unusual, right? Politicians usually aren't very good at money, are they?
I had two good opportunities. I ran that business, and then we sold it, and then I was asked to run another company, kind of the same thing in the oil and gas industry, making drilling rig repairs and tools and downhole equipment and the like. Lots of fun.
So tell me about your experience in politics. So I know you rose to become a congressman in Kansas, which of course had become your home. Tell me about that experience.
So that was the first time I ran for public elected office. The only thing I'd actually run for before was to be the member of my homeowners association board. When I was unhappy about shake shingles or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And then I'd been involved a little bit in Republican politics back home and been involved in the Republican Party as well. But in 2009, I was watching what was happening, and I didn't like the direction of the country was being taken by President Obama, and decided I would take a shot at running for Congress, and was blessed enough to get elected.
So you rose pretty prominently, because from there, you and the administration, of course, became the director of the CIA, and you lasted the whole administration, which is actually, somewhat unusual.
Yeah. Yes, there was a little bit of turnover, no doubt about it.
So tell me about your time at the CIA.
Oh my gosh.
It's a big building complex. Yeah.
Yeah. A great opportunity. So I was on the intelligence committee in the House, so I had a little exposure to the CIA, but I'd never obviously known it like I came to know it when I was the director. It's a place that provides this absolutely pristine, critical information to the commander in chief and his fellow cabinet members, so that they can have the best information in the world when they're trying to make really hard decisions around the world. And the workforce is fantastic. It ranges from people who do analysis to people who are actually out doing espionage operations, to engineers and technicians, very capable signals people. The skill sets, we have economists. The skill sets are very broad, and they're some of America's brightest, most talented people working in a clandestine setting. You all seen it in the movies. They don't quite have it right, but the work that is done there is truly remarkable and important to keeping people safe all across our country.
Yeah, we kind of view the CIA through two lenses, like this black box that we don't know anything about, and also this, people who do bad things. And that's pretty much the limitation of our understanding, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the case. Look, every organization has bad apples, but the CIA is focused on the work we do overseas. It's not the FBI does the work back home. We were about chasing down bad guys around the world, trying to help the president understand how decision makers in countries all around the world, both our friends and our adversaries, were thinking about things, so that they could make really informed decisions and have that real-time good information upon which to make those decisions.
So you were kind of an unknown when you became Secretary of State. I kind of remember reading your name and thinking, well, I know who he is. I remember him from being from Congress, and obviously, the CIA, obviously. But how was that, being the face of America abroad? What was it like?
My goodness, it was amazing. I can't tell you how much people want to see you when you're America's Secretary of State. So wherever you fly, right, that plane lands and they want you to come see their leader, the prime minister, the president, your counterpart, the foreign secretary. And it wasn't because of Mike. It was never they didn't want to see Mike. They wanted to see America's Secretary of State, because America's Secretary of State can do an awful lot of good for them. And if they can develop a relationship or make a persuasive argument and convince America to assist them, then it's much to the benefit of their country. And we are so big, so powerful, and frankly, such a force for good throughout the world that it's quite a privilege to be the embodiment of that history of the administration trying to deliver for them, knowing full well the mission was always America first, get it right, take care of our people at home, and then let's find friends and partners to help deliver on that. It was the privilege of a lifetime for sure.
So I had a friend who worked for you, so I was following it. Her name's Morgan. Obviously, you know who that is. And one of the things I was shocked by, you're of course Signore Pompeo. You're Italian. I can tell. You said one time that America's not a multicultural country. What did you mean by that? And did we get that wrong in the quotations? Because I know
Yeah,
Can you explain that more?
I can. Of course, we have people from all over the place, right? I love my Italian heritage. On my mother's side, she was from Europe. We loved that too. People come from all different backgrounds. This is lovely and wonderful. But America's always had this special thing about it, and our founders knew it. And when they busted away from the Brits, now coming up on our anniversary from 1776 in a few days, they knew that there was something really unique about being American, about this quintessential set of understandings that they gave us this document, right? They started it with the Declaration of Independence, and they built out a framework called the Constitution. They built this republic. And so whoever you are and from wherever you come, whether you were an indigenous person that was here originally, or you just arrived yesterday and came through our system and you got a chance, as I did, to be, I got to swear in people to become new citizens in America. No matter where it's from, you have this incredible privilege, and people want to be here. And that's what I meant. That's what I meant. We need to have the unity surrounded by understanding about America as a noble nation, a good country, one that takes care of its people. And we have fights, we have different political views inside of our country, but in the end of the day, we're all Americans, and we need to have that first and foremost in our minds as we think about not only how we raise our families, but how we represent ourselves and find our place in the world as well.
That's not the answer I expected, because especially through the the image we have of you through media, I expected something harsher and more abrupt.
I don't know what to tell you. This is who I am. It's how I think about our nation.
So, Secretary Pompeo, I wanted to ask you about what happened, or what exactly the events were that led up to you getting banned from mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Look, we had begun for the first time to challenge the Chinese Communist Party. It's doing so many bad things around the world. Forget its own political system, its communist political system, but they've got 1 million people, mostly Muslim people, in the western part of their country, held in internment camps. I mean, that doesn't happen. And so I had declared that this was genocidal and was ongoing. We began to confront them when they were engaged in activity around the world where they were using money to extort political favors for themselves, what you could call it bribery, but it's on a grander scale than that. And so they weren't happy about this. We were confronting them. We were imposing real costs on them. We'd also seen that they continue to refuse to tell anybody how the heck this virus got out of Wuhan. And we now had millions of people dead, billions and billions of dollars lost. America's still trying to recover, as are countries all around the world. And the Chinese Communist Party continues to cover up what actually happened. They're still operating the viral lab that I think it's most likely where this originated. We have to know that this isn't going to happen again. So we were working hard on those things. They didn't like it, and they decided to sanction me, to send a message, frankly, I think mostly to the Biden administration, that says, you may be in government service now, but someday you won't. And when you aren't, if you would like to do business with us, you should know you should be very careful. I think that's a dangerous message to send. And I'm confident that the Biden administration will still do the right thing and make sure that we protect America from the threat from the CCP.
So why hasn't more been done? And I'm not specifically just speaking to the Trump administration, but also Obama, Bush, Clinton, going all
Sure.
the way back to Nixon. Why have we developed this dependency on China and we give them our money? And we, until the Trump administration, admittedly, say what you want about the Trump administration, the tone on China was generally permissive. Like, here's our money, do whatever you want.
Yeah, that is certainly true. And it is, your point's what very well taken. This isn't Republican or Democrat. This was US policy for since roughly 1972, when Nixon and Kissinger went to China, was that this was a developing country. And if we just engage with them more, they'll leave us alone. What stays in Beijing will stay in Beijing. And, for 30 or 40 years, that might well have made sense. But for a couple of decades now, we should have known better. We could see them become exploitative. We could see them become expansionary. We could see them start to try and foist their way on us. And for a lot of reasons, most of them economic, right? We have a lot of folks making a lot of money there. Business is growing because of their connectivity to China. They have a market of 1.4 billion people, an important market for US businesses. For those reasons, we just turn the other cheek. We'd see them do something and we would give them an exception. And President Trump made clear that was enough. We've got to fix this. They stole tens of millions of American jobs by just literally stealing intellectual property from the United States. Some creative engineer, some talented writer, some person who was doing great coding, and they just come and steal it for themselves after we've invested our money. And then they build the product there and they dump it back on our country. This is crazy. No rational nation would permit this to continue. And yet it was awfully lucrative to look the other way. And President Trump said enough, and we began to right the ship. The good news is, not only did we do it, but we convinced lots of others around the world who were suffering the same darn thing from the CCP. And they're all started down this path. The West, those of us who believe in like logic and thought and reason, and good governance. I think all of us can now see that we slept on this for a couple decades too long and are beginning to right the ship. And this will be a good thing. It'll not only be good, frankly, for those of us in the West. And when I say the West, I'd say the West is an idea here, but rule of law, property rights, human rights. Those of us in the West doing this will actually benefit the Chinese people too. There are 1.2 billion Chinese people who aren't part of the Chinese Communist Party. And we love them. We want them to be successful and prosperous too. And if we get this right, their lives will be better off as well.
So why didn't even the Trump administration, because I can't just sit here and give you a free pass. I know the Trump administration changed the tone on everything, but were tariffs really the best answer? I mean, in the end, US consumers paid that. So like, I know the narrative changed, Secretary, but it's more like, this is like, shouldn't we have convened the business community and been like, hey, like, you got to diversify your supply chains like now?
So we did, but I will concede there is a lot of work left undone that we didn't get to, that there's a long way to go to address this problem. So that's why I'm so hopeful this doesn't become partisan. This can't be partisan. This is about America, not about Trump or Biden or anything else. This isn't about politics. This is about getting it right and protecting our country. No, we left a lot still to do. On tariffs, it's a very difficult problem. So that tariffs are imperfect. But boy, when you are trying to right the ship and get reciprocal trade, all we ever wanted was saying, look, if we sell you a widget and you're gonna put 3% tariff on it, you show us the widget back. It should be 3%. We prefer 0. If you want 19, we'll do 19. But to have reciprocity in the trade relationship makes an enormous amount of sense. And so we were working our way towards getting there. But we did a lot of other things with the business community. I assure you, we convened to them. Some of them didn't like what we were peddling. They wanted to keep making money there. But I think they all came to realize the enormous political risk when they saw the virus and they saw our supply chains get honked up. I mean, when the Chinese Communist Party tells an American company that's doing business in China and it's making products under a contract with an American company, says, no, you can't ship that product. So an American company wants to ship a product back to America to keep Americans alive. And the Chinese Communist Party says, no, you can't ship that today. I think the game, it's pretty apparent, right? This means it's not really fully an American business. It's subject to the whims of the communists in China. So we began to raise awareness. And so you'll see supply chains start to move. All these things all take time. You'll see companies make different choices about how they produce their product and services. And I'm hopeful. The Biden administration has actually done good work so far on this. I applaud them for keeping up the good work we did on Taiwan and the good work we were doing on Hong Kong. Those are good things. And if we can begin to get this thing headed in the right direction over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, we'll be in an awful lot better place than we find ourselves today.
Wait. Stop the presses. You applaud the Biden administration? Is that even something you're allowed to say in this political environment, Secretary?
Oh my gosh. It's for me, I'm as a conservative Republican as you'll find. I believe in the central tenets of what the Republican Party does, but I want good things for America. And so, yes, when they get it right, when I think they've got the right end of the stick, we should all applaud. We should encourage them. And to the extent they're seeking our help, we should help them. This is what makes America so special and so great. And by the way, when they have it wrong, I feel like I have an obligation to say, no, I think you have that wrong. And that's what I've done for these first 150 days. That's what I'll keep doing.
So tell me a little bit about, partisan politics these days. It seems like you don't hear a lot of what I'm hearing out of you right now, which is, the other side has some stuff right. I'm not from that side, but
Yeah.
they're doing some good work, right?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt there are two deep divisions in how the parties think about the world. And you've seen inside the parties, there's fractures too, right? Inside the Democrat Party, there's a big, bold left progressive ring. And then there's folks like Senator Manchin who are less that way. And the same's true inside of my party. We should know that the founders called them factions. But we should know these have existed for an awfully long time, and they'll continue to exist. And I hear people say, boy, the rhetoric is really heated today. Go back and read what they were saying about each other in the 1780s and 1790s and during the Civil War. Man, we're pretty tame, to be honest with you. And so these debates ought to be had. I can absolutely articulate a vision for how I see America moving forward. That would be grounded firmly in the conservative ideas that I think have served our country so well. But I'm happy if there's a better idea and it comes from some other place, from the more centrist part of my party or from the Democrat Party. It's about getting it right. And we should be fearless in speaking about this. We should allow every voice to be heard. We shouldn't cancel anyone. And we should each make our case and then convince the American people that we're right. And when we are elected, whether it's a city council or school board seat, when we are elected, make sure that we deliver on the promises that we made. If we turned out to be wrong, the American people will see that quickly and they'll reject it and they'll move another direction.
So is there room for diversity of thought in the Republican Party, or is there room for gay people, brown people, all these things? Tell me more about that.
Absolutely. There's is a big tent, has been for an awfully long time. I can't imagine it moving in any other direction. I have good friends in the party who are gay. I have good friends in the party who are African American. I just today, for example, as a perfect timely example, today I announced I'm supporting Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, someone who I came to Congress with back in 2011, African American, elected from the South, an amazing, talented leader, and just a good human being. Yeah, this party is plenty big. It's plenty big for people from all over. Our party is a party of ideas. We have a view of the way the founders intended our country to move forward and the things that help our family and protect people's religious freedom. Those are things I care about an awful lot. And I'd welcome everyone inside who thinks about America in the same way.
But the Republicans kind of have a PR problem, especially among young people. I'm sure you're a normal human. You have a family, right? I'm sure you have some kids. I think you have one son, right?
I have one son. He's 30 years old. Yeah.
Okay, so he's fairly young, right? I'm sure his friends, go, oh, I know who your dad is. It seems like the Republicans aren't cool. It's not cool to be Republican these days.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know. He also has friends who say, "Can you get your dad's autograph for me?" so it's true. There's a little of each. Look, it's two thoughts. One, it's often been the case that people tend to be more progressive, more liberal when they're younger, and they get a little bit older and see a little bit more of the world, and they move to the right. That's been the case for at least the modern era, the post-World War II era. But second, I, for one, and I hope all of my Republican friends will be relentless in addressing the things that matter to the next generation and addressing the things that are going to give them the chance to live their life the way they want to raise their family the way they want to, whatever that may be. I hope that's the case. And if we've got to figure out a different way to market that, so be it. But I think these ideas resonate with people of every background and every age. And I hope that the ears will be open and that the schools and universities will continue to let us come speak and talk. And then they'll bring in somebody who disagrees with us so that young people get a chance to hear every thought and every idea and form their own judgments in a way that is intellectual and not based on some legacy idea that may be outmoded or doesn't fit.
So how about debt and deficits? We seem to be running the federal government deep into the red, and it seems to be a bipartisan issue these days. What are your thoughts on that?
It is. It's tragically bipartisan. I agree with you. Like, this is a difficult problem for sure, but neither party has taken seriously the responsibility to make sure that we don't, those same young people you were just talking about, we've got to make sure they can still live in the same America. And I would always tell Nick when he was younger, I would say, Nick, I'm fine. My social security check's going to clear. Yours may not. We got to get our act together. It is awful easy to spend other people's money and difficult, and takes real political leadership to make the case for why certain things have to change and why we can't spend as much as we are. I hope both parties will find a way to take this more seriously.
So tell me a little bit about your plans before you leave me, because I know as always you have your busy calendar and your assistant's going to start hating me if I don't.
Yes, no worries. So I'm working really hard to help candidates get elected in 2022. Good conservative people from all across the country. I was in California this weekend and in Texas. I'm swinging back out to, I think, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania next week, doing the same thing, helping folks get elected. I'm also trying to find a way to become an entrepreneur again, start a couple little projects. So I have a couple of those in the works as well. And I really love that. It's something I've always enjoyed. And then I've got a project I'm working on religious freedom as well, doing some writing there. Those three things keep me plenty busy.
I'm sure. So no plans as of yet. What do you see the 2024 landscape looking like?
Oh my gosh. If you'd asked me in 2017 what I'd be doing, I'd have said, well, I'm going to be a member of Congress for 2 more years. And I ended up having 2 great gigs. I have no earthly idea what it'll look like.
No presidential plans as of yet, because it seems like you have the pitch down.
Oh goodness, I'm gonna stay in the fight. I'll be working on this project somewhere. These ideas are timeless, and it's really important that we get them right. So I don't know. It's hard to know where the Lord will put me, but we're going to keep working at it.
Well, we appreciate your time, Secretary Pompeo, and all the best in your pursuits, the big 3 right now, especially entrepreneurship. That's the lifeblood of this country.
Amen.
You always have to remember, without that entrepreneurs, none of this is possible. So,
not a darn thing's happen if we're not creating wealth. Bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You bet. So long.
So this was definitely not the interview that I expected from the former Secretary of State in a few ways. Primarily, the first way was that, he fundamentally praised the Biden administration for their work on China. And this is something that I think needs to be noticed by people both on the left and the right, is that the narrative has permanently changed on China. For far too long, everyone's ignored China. Like, oh, it's just there. They make our stuff. It's cheap. Like, they'll eventually become democratic. If we give them enough money, and if, we educate their youth, and if we trade with them, and they'll eventually become like the rest of the world, right? So say what you want about the Trump administration, but the narrative on China has fundamentally changed, and it's permanent. And no matter who's in charge now, we're going to look at China in a different light. And every day we get more and more news from people who defect, leaks coming out of mainland China, that things aren't good. And the big canary in the coal mine, if you don't know that saying, it's, they would bring a canary down into the mine. And if the canary died, there was toxic gas in the mine. Well, for us, that was really Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong was a liberal democracy, not politically liberal, in the sense that it had elected leaders and an independent judiciary, and was basically a Western city. And once the British gave it back, slowly but surely, the communists have turned it into a city that resembles the rest of China. So we have to give credit where credit is due, and specifically to Mike Pompeo, who's now banned from China. Congrats on changing the narrative. And also, we don't know what your political career is going to be, but We wish you well in your pursuits. And I'd like to hear more of this bipartisan dialogue. I'd like to hear more about how sometimes the other side has the right answers and to give credit where credit is due. The Biden administration is pursuing a lot of the same things as the Trump administration pursued. And you probably won't hear that on liberal or conservative media outlets, but it's something you should be hearing about. China is a threat to the United States, as is Russia. And we need to recalibrate our commerce and our trade policy and our diplomacy to reflect that reality. And that was pioneered by the Trump administration. The Bush and Obama administrations unfortunately ignored the problem. And going forward, we need more people like Secretary Pompeo to stand up and say, hey, this is good. Keep on doing it because we're going in the right direction. And reality is reality. No matter how cheap our products are from China, we are funding the rise of someone who is not only a rival, but a threat to our future. And not just America's future, but the rest of the world. Because China has their fingers in every single pie around the world. And they're playing the long game and they're playing the smart game. While we sit here and argue about, silliness, they're focused on building a sustainable economy and a sustainable future for their people. And, obviously, China has its problems. You can't build a civilization based on copying other countries. And I don't know how sustainable their model is environmentally or socially. But in the meantime, we need to really confront the problem. And that starts with things that Secretary Pompeo said, which is recognizing reality, understanding that we can't continue doing things the way we've been doing them and sticking our head in the sand. So that was what really stuck out to me about Mike Pompeo's talk with me, was really his talk on China. And, it's cute because, Secretary Pompeo is a real person. His relationship with his son is something I mentioned, and it's something that you read about a lot. His son is very special to him, and his son's adopted, but they've, developed a very close relationship. And when his son got engaged, that the fiance said, are you the sanctioned family? Am I marrying into a sanctioned family? Secretary Pompeo is a real person. He lives in Kansas. He has to make money like the rest of us. But for a while there, he was the face of America. And no matter whether you're left or right, that's the ceremony and this pomp and circumstance, no pun intended, is something for the history books. And no matter what you think, America is still the leader in this world for now. And he was the leader, at least the face of the free world, not the leader. That would be the president. So it was an honor to have him on the podcast. In the same way, I would extend the same invitation to Anthony Blinken, who is our current Secretary of State, probably a little busy for the podcast. But in the meantime, stay tuned to so many more good interviews like this and conversations about bipartisanship, about the need for entrepreneurship, and about the need for a reality check without all the talking points. I'm David Grasso. Until next time.